Hello and welcome to the ultimate Drecko ranch tutorial for oxygen not included. I've spent many hours researching and testing different ranch designs, and I think I've come up with a design that is a cut above the rest. It's time to take our Drecko ranching to the next level, and we're going to do that by showing you step by step how to set up this efficient, highly automated Drecko ranch that I am calling the Drecko Island Ranch Triplex, or DIRT for short. This ranch features two shearing/automated incubation rooms with a shared conveyor loader to move shorn items, and a smart egg delivery system that will direct surplus eggs to an evolution chamber at the bottom right, converting any extra eggs to meat. There is also a critter pickup drop-off system that will keep the breeder room full, and the entry point and overall layout was optimized to reduce as much unnecessary travel as possible. So first, let's cover a few basics and go over the prerequisites for this build. For those who may be new to Drecko ranching, Dreckos are a critter that can be found in the jungle biome. The jungle biome, also known as caustic, is a hot biome usually filled with chlorine or hydrogen gas and can be found on all asteroid types in the base game. Dreckos can also be found in the printing pod if care packages are turned on in the game settings when you start a new game. When a Drecko's dietary requirements are satisfied, they will excrete phosphorus, which makes them important for wheezewort maintenance and fertilizer production. They typically live for 150 cycles and drop 3,200 kilocalories of meat upon death. When kept in a hydrogen atmosphere, their scales will regrow after being removed, allowing for repeated harvesting at a shearing station for reed fiber or plastic if they are the glossy variant. If you have access to these critters, especially early to mid-game, I highly recommend farming them, as they are the best renewable source for reed fiber and plastic. That said, we're going to need to unlock a few things in the research tree to build a full-fledged ranch. We can start with everything up to animal control in the food section, everything up to solid control in the solid materials section, advanced automation in computers, and temperature moderation in gases for the insulated and airflow tiles. Oh, and let's not forget those sweet fire poles to increase movement speed, which are also found in solid materials, but that's totally optional. And last but not least, we will need one duplicate, preferably two, on different schedules, for round-the-clock coverage with at least one skill point in critter ranching each. This typically works best when the duplicates are already interested in critter ranching and have some level of bonus towards it, as this will further increase task efficiency and groomed buff duration. Okay, now that we know a little bit about Dreckos and what we'll need in order to build our ranch, let's get building. This is the basic shape of the ranch. The most important reason for the size of the breeder room is due to the fact that each Drecko requires 12 tiles of space in order not to be cramped. Additionally, the maximum size for a ranch is 96 tiles, which means our ranch can hold up to 8 Dreckos. Next, we will add a grooming station to officially make it a ranch, as well as a shearing station for harvesting scales. Down here, we have added farm plots to grow mealwood to feed our Dreckos. Now, there are a few options available to feed Dreckos. However, we are looking to obtain glossy Dreckos for plastic, and we can dramatically increase the chances that one of our Dreckos will lay a glossy Drecko egg by feeding them mealwood. When using mealwood, the ratio of plants to critters is 3 mealwood for every 4 Dreckos, which means we will need 6 mealwood plants to support our ranch of 8. Note, 6 mealwood plants will require a steady source of dirt at a rate of 60 kilograms per cycle. Also note, Dreckos are born pretty hot, and they tend to warm things up as they cool. This can be problematic as mealwood has a small range of temperature between 10 and 20 degrees Celsius it can grow in. To help maintain this in the midst of a bunch of hot and sweaty Dreckos, we can add wheezeworts to the center farm tile to help keep the mealwood cool. Now let's add some water to the corners. This will keep our Dreckos restricted to the island we have created in the center, as Dreckos cannot climb ladders and will avoid water. Though they will not cross water, we still need these corner pockets to keep the Dreckos from even attempting to cross, because they will try.
You will try.
We can also go ahead and add water to our evolution chamber while we're at it, and fill our liquid lock at the entrance. One way to do this is by adding bottle emptiers at each pool and setting them to auto bottle. Another way is to pump water in via a pipe. Just be sure to keep an eye out so they don't overfill. Alright, looking good. Next, let's build our shearing/incubation rooms. We can start by adding a couple of pneumatic doors stacked vertically like so, creating 2 rooms 6 tiles wide and 4 tiles tall. Next, let's add an incubator and a shearing station to each room in these positions. While we're at it, we can add a critter pickup here in the right shearing room and a drop-off down here in our breeder room. Let's set the pickup to 10 so it'll remove any extra Dreckos the room contains to the critter drop-off if there is a vacancy. We'll also need to set the drop-off to 8 Dreckos and Drecklets for this to work. This will ensure an Aaron is created when the breeder room contains less than 8 Dreckos. Let's also add sweepers, 1 tile from the left of each shearing room, followed by a critter sensor, and then a conveyor chute to the right. Let's connect these critter sensors to the conveyor chutes with automation wire while we're at it. Now we can put a timer sensor at the top left corner of the leftmost room, and this is as good a time as any to go ahead and complete the automation circuits for this build. Get it? It's a time joke. It's funny. Moving on. Let's start by setting the timer to 0 seconds green signal. This is necessary to keep the automation components to follow from prematurely activating. Now let's connect it vertically with automation wire, continuing 1 tile beyond the incubator input. Here we will add a filter gate and set it to 75 seconds, followed by a buffer gate also set to 75 seconds. We will connect the filter gate output to the buffer gate input and the buffer gate output to the second incubator input, like so. You will know the setup is correct so far if both gates are red. Now we can go back to our timer and set it to 600 seconds red signal and 75 seconds green. If the operation of this circuit isn't obvious, don't worry. We will review the operation of the entire ranch towards the end of the video. For now, let's move on to finishing our shipping network. We can start by adding conveyor loaders and sweepers at the following locations. We can also add a conveyor receptacle to the left of the airflow tile under the island. We will supply this with a source of dirt to automate the maintenance of the mealwood plants. Next, we can connect all our shipping components with conveyor rails, not forgetting to add a bridge here. The reason this bridge is necessary is to prevent items from backfeeding toward the chutes in the shearing rooms. The reason this happens is because this junction makes the direction of item movement unclear. The bridge fixes this and only allows items to flow toward the evolution chamber. Okay, now that we have all of our power consuming devices in place, we can go ahead and wire them up. We can do this with basic wire because the typical load for the circuit should stay below 1000 watts, which is wire's maximum rating, as it is highly unlikely everything will be operating at the same time. Just be aware that circuit damage may occur if this circuit is connected to another circuit with additional devices drawing power from it. Alright, so we've got our power done. Now it's time for the really fun part, filling this thing with hydrogen. You can go about this however you want. Some may prefer to vacuum out the room entirely first, but I personally like to build a gas pump in the bottom left with a filter for hydrogen and carbon dioxide and pump everything else out. While this is running, I like to add a vent connected to a hydrogen source at the top right. I continue adding and filtering until the hydrogen fills the entire top down to the gas pump. At this point, if you only have oxygen, carbon dioxide, diluted oxygen, or a mix of the 3 below the hydrogen, you can stop here and call it done. The idea here is to fill the ranch with as much hydrogen as you can without stifling the mealwood at the bottom. This level of hydrogen will ensure all the Dreckos in the shearing room will be able to regrow their scales, while also giving the breeder room Dreckos as much atmosphere as possible to do the same. If you really want to be an overachiever with this task, you can really go for the gold by filling the ranch with hydrogen down to 1 or 2 tiles above the farm plots and remove everything but carbon dioxide or oxygen from the bottom. Mealwood only requires a suitable atmosphere on its bottom tile. Just be careful with overfilling even the slightest, as it can affect growing efficiency. This level of detail may give you a slight increase in breeder Drecko scale growth, as they may spend a fraction more time in hydrogen while hanging underneath the island, but if you're doing things right in the shearing rooms, this optimization is a bit of a waste. But hey, this is ONI, and over-engineering things can be rewarding in its own masochistic kind of way. Okay, time for a pop quiz. Nah, I'm just kidding. Let's review how this ranch operates. If you haven't already, wrangle any loose Dreckos into the breeder room. If you have more than 8 or only have eggs, put them in the shearing rooms. I like to set the left incubator to glossy Drecko eggs and the right to regular Drecko eggs once I have some of both. This aids with restocking the breeder room later on, as we only want regular Dreckos in there, and the right shearing room is the one with the critter pickup in it, so it makes the most sense to raise them in that room. But until you get your first glossy Drecko egg, it makes the most sense to grow in numbers as quickly as possible using both for regular eggs. Speaking of eggs, while there are eggs in the incubators, the leftmost will cycle on for 75 seconds, long enough to be lullabied by a critter ranching dupe. This buff increases incubation speed by 400%. After the 75-second period, it will turn off for 600 seconds, or 1 whole cycle, which is how long the lullaby buff lasts. As the timer ends its green signal period, it will activate the threshold time of the filter gate, which in turn activates the buffer gate, which will send a green signal to the second incubator for 75 seconds, allowing its egg to receive the lullaby supply buff as well. This will continue every cycle, indefinitely, as long as there are eggs in the incubators and power to operate them. Once the Dreckos in the breeder room start laying eggs of their own, both the sweepers give the room full coverage and will load eggs into the top conveyor loader and send them toward the shearing rooms. The critter sensor in each shearing room can be set to whatever number Dreckos you wish to have in the room. I personally have mine set to 10 critters and eggs for a good amount of resources, but not too much to crash my computer. Once the first room has 10, it will shut its chute, causing the eggs to continue to the second shearing room, where the same process will occur. After they are both full and the chutes are closed, any additional eggs will be directed to the evolution chamber, where they will evolve upon hatching. This is also where all the items swept out of the breeder in shearing rooms will be sent. The loader in the left shearing room is accessible by both nearby sweepers and should be set to accept reed fiber, meat, plastic, and eggshells. The loader above and to the right in the breeder room is set to accept reed fiber, phosphate, and meat. However, it is set to a slightly lower priority than the farm plot containing the Wheezewort in order to allow the bottom sweeper to use phosphate to maintain it before sending the rest of the phosphate to the evolution chamber. Notice the reduced priority numbers for the farm tiles and loaders in order to reduce the chance of a duplicate performing these tasks. All of this is then sorted out by the sweeper above the chamber and deposited into the loader above that. This loader is set to accept everything except regular Drecko eggs and glossy Drecko eggs. Feel free to send or sort this output to anywhere you need it. Now, some of you probably know that a Wheezewort puts out a fair bit of radiation, and also notice that the working area is ever so slightly in its area of effect. Though this isn't anywhere near a colony-ending dose, I recommend changing the tiles below the stations in the breeder room to plastic as soon as you have a glossy Drecko to shear and plastic to spare. This will reduce radiation exposure as much as possible. It's a small improvement, but it's an improvement nonetheless. Speaking of Wheezeworts, if at some point the Wheezeworts isn't providing enough cooling to keep the mealwood growing, it may be a good idea to add a liquid cooling loop to do the job instead. This can be accomplished best with a finely controlled aqua tuner setup, but any mid to low 20 degrees Celsius water you may have laying around can do in a pinch. Just be careful not to overcool it with something like a direct pipe from a geyser, as there are ways of warming it up a bit before use by cooling other things first. Speaking of overcooling, it is also possible for the Wheezeworts to overcool the mealwood. If this happens, you can simply uproot it until you need cooling again. Also, it would be best if we add some Atmo suits at the entrance. This will prevent our dupes from getting eye irritation and allow them to stay inside the ranch longer, since they would otherwise be holding their breath. Now, there's one last thing we can do to make this ranch truly shine above all the others that have come before it, and that is to replace the grooming station with a critter fountain. This is one of the newer structures, and it will require us to unlock Brackeen Flow, which is near the right end of the research tree under the power section. I mentioned this towards the end because this is more of a late game upgrade and can be considered optional, as it will require heavy research investment to build and a Brackeen liquid source to operate. The critter fountain provides the Dreckos with a hydration buff. When a critter drinks from this fountain, it provides them with a hydration buff for one cycle that increases their happiness by 5. This just so happens to be the same amount as being groomed by a duplicate, except the fountain doesn't require any duplicate labor. This means we can get the same reproduction rate and only need duplicates to shear the Dreckos when their scales are fully grown. I personally like to switch the shearing station in the critter fountain, as it will reduce duplicate travel distance slightly, since they will only be coming in this room to shear now. Okay, now that we're finished building, it's time for the overlays. So here is the overall, the automation, power, plumbing, and the shipping overlay. And if you find yourself wanting to build this flipped horizontally, we have those overlays as well. Here's the overall overlay, the automation, power, plumbing, and the shipping overlay. And that's it. You're now a Drecko master.
All right! You're the insult master!
If you like this sort of content, watch this video next. Still here? What did you like? What would you change? How will you use this? Let me know in the comments below. And be sure to shear that like button while you're down there. Just want to take a second to give a huge shout out to 2 Legit City for the original inspiration for this design. I'll link to it in the description. Thanks for watching, and until next time, friends.